I'd like you to meet the Baker family, Mr. Baker, Mrs. Baker, Benji Baker, and Bella Baker. Tonight is Christmas Eve, and the Bakers are getting ready to go to church. Everyone but Mr. Baker, that is. He's had a difficult day at work and is completely exhausted. Plus, he's had 1,000,001 things to do. There's presents to wrap, food to prepare, stockings to fill, a turkey to defrost. Mr. Baker is just way too tired and busy.
I know the Christmas story inside out.
He thought to himself.
I don't need to go to church to hear about it again.
Benji and Bella tried their best to persuade their dad to come with them to church.
We need to remember why we're celebrating Christmas. We can't forget the birth of Jesus.
They exclaimed, but Mr. Baker had made up his mind. He wasn't going. That was that. So, with a wave, Mrs. Baker, Benji and Bella reluctantly ventured out into the freezing cold, leaving Mr. Baker behind in their cosy warm home. Mr. Baker sat by the crackling fire and began working through the pile of presents that needed wrapping. The winds outside were getting louder and the snow was getting heavier. For a moment, Mr. Baker was very thankful to be in the shelter of his warm and dry home. As the night went on and the present pile got smaller, Mr. Baker's attention was drawn to a short, quiet noise repeating over and over. It seemed to be coming from outside. He got up and made his way to the window to try and find out more about where it was coming from. He put on his wellies, wrapped up in his coat and scarf, then boldly walked out into the cold, dark winter's night. As he got closer to the sound, it all became clear. It was a tiny, helpless little kitten. Mr. Baker couldn't leave it out in the dark and cold on its own. It needed to be fed and warmed up and looked after. He wanted to give it everything it needed. He tried everything he could to encourage the kitten to come inside. He tried with food. He approached really slowly. He tried to look as friendly as possible. Mr. Baker was worried the kitten would probably die if it was left outside overnight. It was so small and thin. He tried again to get the kitten to come into the warmth, but the kitten's only response was to hiss. Mr. Baker was frustrated. He thought to himself,
If only the kitten knew that I was just trying to help and wanted what was best. If only I could become a cat and I could talk to the kitten and just explain. It would be so much easier. Then I could communicate and lead the kitten into the warm and safe comfort of my home.
Mr. Baker could hear the church bells ringing in the distance. Suddenly, the penny dropped in Mr. Baker's head. He had heard the Christmas story so many times. Jesus was God's son. Jesus came to earth as a baby to live amongst us. Just as he had tried communicating to this kitten so he could save it from freezing to death, so God had been trying to communicate to people for centuries. He sent signs, he sent messages, he even sent angels. But people had chosen to walk away from God and they were in danger, just like this cat. The best way to communicate with people was to become one of them, live among them, teach and explain things to them. So God sent his son Jesus to guide them back to him, back to safety. The snow had stopped falling, the sky had cleared, and now was full of shining stars. Mr. Baker looked up to the sky, and with tears in his eyes, he whispered under his breath,
Thank you for sending your son Jesus to us. And God, thank you for reminding me tonight why you sent him.